to order the Avon Town Council meeting for July 13th, 2023. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Julie, would you mind taking roll call, please?
Greg Zuzin,
Present.
Don Loudon, Robert Pope,
Present.
Tim Roberts,
Present.
Steve Eisenbarth.
Present.
Thank you, Julie. First item on the agenda, our consent agenda to include the check register for July 13th, approval of our minutes from our last meeting as well. Any discussion, questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the check register for 7/13/23 and approval of the minutes for June 22nd, 2023. I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Tim Roberts,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzin.
4.
Next item on the agenda, the first of two public comment opportunities. You may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close that section of public comment. Move on to council comment and liaison reports. We'll start with you, Mr. Roberts.
Nothing to report except for attending our night on the town in Avon. It was a fantastic event, a big turnout, and just happy for all the town employees that put it on. They did a fantastic job.
Yes, they did. Mr. Zuzin?
I have nothing.
Mr. Eisenbarth?
The communications board was supposed to meet last night. They did not meet for the purpose they want to put together the budget and work on that. So that's coming about. Just a quick reminder that to everyone that there is a Talks Away Day at Hickory. It's from 8 o'clock to 1 p.m. And really encourage people to come out to Hickory Elementary and get rid of.
What day?
This Saturday. I didn't say it, did I?
No.
This Saturday at Hickory Elementary. It's a lot of fun, and you can get many things cleared out of your house. So please come on out. Other than that, that's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. I had a few school board meetings since the last time I updated you all, but Ryan has shared the highlights from those meetings in our weekly updates. And I want to reiterate what Tim said. The night at the park was fantastic. Great job to the Parks Department and many other employees outside of that department that assisted with that great event. And a special thank you to the residents who made it such a wonderful event. That's all I've got. Move on. New business. Final reading ordinance 2023-11 internal controls policy regarding federal grants and cost principles. Mr. Taylor, I assume you're speaking to this one.
Yes, all three ordinances tonight have to do with audit requirements, and so requiring us to have policies. So ordinance 2023-11 would adopt an internal control regarding federal grants and cost principles. As you can see, there is a reference to the Federal Code of Federal Regulations, and this would incorporate and make those regulations part of our internal control policy. You will see those begin on the bottom of page 2. And this has to do with federal grants that the town receives and how they will be audited and reviewed and under what standard. And this allows our administrators who are dealing with federal grants to know the rules that will be applied to them when they have their federal audits. And this is second reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
None.
Thanks for bringing this to our attention, Julie. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance 2023-11 as presented.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? No. Julie, would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Greg Zuzin,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Tim Roberts,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
Next item on the agenda, introduction of ordinance 2023-12, amending internal controls to adopt suspension and debarment policy.
This ordinance would add an amendment to our internal controls regarding suspension and debarment. At both the federal and state level, there are regulations which indicate that we are not allowed to work with or pay grant funds to companies that have been either suspended or debarred from participating in state or federal grants. And so what this does, it makes that our policy as well. The reason for this policy and why it's so important is that we may not know who has been suspended and debarred, although it's public information. It's just kind of hard to find. So this policy will say that in all contracts that are dealing with federal or state grants, and this mainly is going to be in Steve's area, that it will include a paragraph, and it's there on 501, a paragraph that says that requires the contractors to make a representation to us that they are not suspended, nor are they debarred, and that if that changes during the course of the contract, that they must advise us. And this allows us to avoid penalties for doing business with such people, but it provides a mechanism where we would be advised and a representation be made for us that we can then rely upon. Again, this is actually one of the points of emphasis in audits this year for federal and state grants, something that both the federal and state government takes pretty seriously, but this allows us to have a way where we say that these provisions must be in our contracts. Typically, when we do work with companies that do a lot of road work, particularly, they're already aware of this and they'll have it. But this also would apply to any public works contract. And the reason that that's important is because sometimes projects don't start out to be a federal or state grant, but then those monies are applied. For example, the ARPA money that you received, the American Recovery Program, if a project's going over and you wanted to put some of that money toward a project, and then suddenly that contract, which didn't start out being governed by these rules, would suddenly be governed by the rules, and we would need to have that imposed. So this says that for all public works contracts, whether they have federal or state funds or not, we're going to ask that this paragraph be in there so we're protected. And this is just introduction, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dan. Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
I have a somewhat related question, Dan. I was just wondering, in your practice, if maybe other towns, has anyone had a rating or restriction of use based on their OSHA ratings, their safety factors? In other words, they've had so many incidents that the town or municipality has said, no, we don't want to deal with people when they have this factor that's above a certain level. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
I have not encountered that. I'm sure it happens. I've also seen, none of my clients, but I'm aware of investigations involving municipalities having contracts with suspended or debarred companies, and that leads to a fine for the municipality. And so you hear about the suspension debarment more often than you would OSHA suspension. That's a different kind of suspension. But mainly a company can be suspended or debarred if they misuse money or present false claims for payment to a municipality or a county. That's where you see this. It's a protective measure. Generally, when we're dealing with federal or state projects, Steve brings a much longer contract to you. We call them the NDOT contracts, but they're much longer and they have a lot more provisions about compliance with federal law, whether it be discrimination, drug testing, those sorts of things. And so what has happened is, and those were fine and we know, but the twist was when ARPA money came in and municipalities started using those funds on what they previously thought were non-federal or state grant contracts, then all of a sudden they were converted to contracts that had to comply with a lot of other requirements. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And that's something you don't see often, but if you see it, the state and federal agencies take that very seriously.
No, I appreciate it. I was just wondering if that layer may be coming on in other towns. I've seen in large business where they actually restrict contractors based on that. And I like that because it gives a level playing ground to the contractors too, not just on price.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of times in a federal grant or a state grant, they'll have specific safety requirements in the contracts,
Okay, thank you.
part of the grant.
Any further questions? All right. Let the record show ordinance 2023-12 is introduced. Next item, introduction of ordinance 2023-13, adopting a federal fund purchasing policy. I assume you're speaking to this one as well.
Yes, this ordinance, much like the others, will allow us to incorporate certain rules that apply to federal funds that we receive through grants as it relates to how we procure goods, materials, and services. And so the town has its own policies regarding this, but for those grant projects, it would again advise our administrators what the rules are regarding procurement so that when we're audited, we can comply and line up with those. These regulations are contained in the Code of Federal Regulations, which is not something we often look at unless they're put in front of us. And so that's really one of the purposes of adoption of the ordinance, is to put it in our internal controls and make it easier for our administrators to find them when they're administering those sort of contracts. This is an introduction only. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? All right. Let the record show ordinance 2023-13 as introduced. Dan, I'm going to hit you up again. Legal counsel report. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, the second of two public comment opportunities. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your time to 3 minutes.
I know they want to talk. I know they do.
Seeing no rush to the microphone, we'll close that. Give a second opportunity for council comment.
I did have one additional comment. The police department did a fantastic job with their new inflatable in the speed pitch
Yeah.
area for awareness. Just kudos to Brian Nugent and the rest of the department on that.
It was a blast.
Yeah, it
I
was.
enjoyed it.
It was a great event. Council calendar.
I've got this one. So your next meeting is July 27th at 7 PM. We're going to do a work session prior to that at 5:30 for all of you. So that is it.
That's it. Meeting adjourned.